I originally decided against making a video on Rian Johnson's Glass Onion, but hopefully the hashtag discourse on this film has finally died down enough to talk about it normally again. Because overall, I thought it was a really fun movie that I think most people really enjoyed. And the cast was excellent, one of the highlights even. But no matter how you specifically feel about the film, there's one common criticism that essentially everyone agrees on. There's no way in hell any of these people would ever actually be friends. And that's an issue. It's not a big issue, as evidenced by its resoundingly positive reception, but I mean, come on. You never want a consensus to form around the fact that perhaps the central conceit of your entire whodunit doesn't pass a smell test. And it's not like it's a bad thing on its face to have an ensemble of people that don't seem like they would be friends. I mean, that's literally the premise of The Breakfast Club. And I want to dig into how they went wrong here, but before I do that, I want to go through a list of various types of ensemble films in order to determine what we can learn from how they work. First, let's define what I'm talking about when I say ensemble film. Nearly all films technically have ensemble casts, but I'm specifically referring to films in which the ensemble is central to the story and where no one character takes a majority of the focus. Top Gun Maverick, for example, great movie, great cast, not an ensemble film. In that movie, we experience the story through a mostly subjective lens, focus closely on how what is happening on screen affects Pete Mitchell. Ensemble films tend to have a more objective lens, taking the side of whomever is simply standing in the spotlight at the moment. And that can often be a harder task. It can be really tiring for an audience to constantly switch perspectives throughout a film, so you have to pace very carefully how the POV is juggled amongst all the characters. Let's examine how different ensemble films approach this issue by dividing them up into roughly 6 different categories. One of my favorite types of ensemble films is what I call the mutual friend film, where a collection of individuals are assembled by a mutual friend based on their specific skills and work to achieve a common goal. Ocean's 11 is one of the best examples of this. It starts out as Danny's story and it finishes as Danny's story, but this is undoubtedly an ensemble film. Each of the 11 gets a scene or two of their own, introducing their backstory and individual skill set, and while Danny is ultimately the leader of the group, the heist doesn't work if even a single piece is missing. Everyone has their role to play, and Soderbergh meticulously ensures each gets their moment in the sun until the very end. Screen time is dealt out like a game of poker, and everyone gets a chance to play their hand. The most common type of ensemble film is the family film. Now, these can portray actual families, like in Little Miss Sunshine or The Royal Tenenbaums, but it can also be work families, like in Network, or found families, like in Boogie Nights. In mutual friend films, each character has to work reasonably well together in order to achieve the common goal. But in family movies, that's not the case at all. All of the characters can absolutely hate each other, but the point is that they're all bound together regardless, whether that be through blood, livelihood, or simply a desire for the safety that comes with being a member of a pack. Of course, the original Knives Out is also a family movie, and it uses that template excellently to service the mystery of who killed Harlan Thrombey. And to top it all off, they're not bound together just by blood in that movie. They also have a common enemy. Therefore, it's not only believable that they be working together, but logical and reasonable that they do so given the premise the film has laid out. Remember this when we discuss Glass Onion. The mutual friend and family movies are really the big 2 in the genre, but we also have a few more niche categories. For instance, there's the Mysterious Invitation movie, where people are mysteriously assembled for no immediately discernible reason, like in Clue or Saw 2. In these films, why the ensemble has been gathered together is often the first mystery that needs to be solved, and there are often meaningful connections between the characters that are revealed as the story unfolds. Another example is the Happenstance movie, where the ensemble comes together merely out of chance, like in The Hateful Eight when the group finds themselves together simply because they need shelter from the storm raging outside. It doesn't matter if anyone likes each other or wants to leave, they have to be here to survive, and that's an ideal breeding ground for conflict. The Breakfast Club also falls into this category, even though by the end they become a found family. They find themselves bound together simply because they were all assigned attention on the same Saturday. One category of ensemble film that always leaves me a bit empty is the short story genre, where we get separate but occasionally intersecting short stories of individual characters, like in Love Actually or in any of those Gary Marshall movies like Valentine's Day or New Year's Eve. I find that I don't have enough time to get fully invested in any one character's story, and all the cross-cutting just makes the whole movie seem a little too rushed and shallow. And then the last category I can think of is the old friends reuniting category, with The Big Chill being the obvious and most successful example. The appeal of this category from a screenwriting perspective is that everyone knows each other, so you can allow the audience to simply catch up with the characters rather than explicitly outlining the full backstories. And the ways the group has grown apart over the years provides a lot of relatable conflict to mine. So if you were following along, you probably noticed that Glass Onion borrows a little bit from many of these categories, but falls neatly into none of them. And while these categories are completely made up by me, it's indicative of how Rian Johnson didn't get the most out of his ensemble cast in this film, and I'll explain why. Miles Braun is certainly a mutual friend that brings them all together, but he's not bringing them together for any real purpose. Yes, it's supposed to be a murder mystery weekend, but he makes it clear from the beginning that the larger purpose is just for them to relax and have fun. And that's not exactly edge-of-your-seat stuff to keep the audience invested while you set everything up for the second half of the film. They've all known each other for years too, so it's definitely not a mutual friend movie, but it's also not an old friends reuniting movie because they still all regularly keep in touch. So we don't get to mind the conflict of strangers coming together or of old friends discovering things aren't like they used to be. I would certainly consider this motley crew a found family of sorts, but found family movies are about people finding their alternative families. And even when their bonds could be tested, nobody even turns against anyone else. Miles sends out a somewhat mysterious invitation, of course, but there's no actual mystery once it's opened, and that the invitation came from him was never a mystery at all. It's certainly not a happenstance movie or a short story movie, so what kind of ensemble film is this? Well, that's kind of the issue. The categories of ensemble films I went through aren't really bins to sort movies into for pedantic purposes. They're proven methods for maximizing the storytelling potential of your ensemble cast. And while each individual performance is great, the ensemble as a whole just feels a bit lifeless to me and mostly even purposeless. Let's examine the central mystery of Glass Onion and talk about where Johnson went wrong. And if for some reason you're still watching this video without having seen the film, get out of here, we're talking spoilers. So let's break it down as quickly as possible. Ready? Andy builds a friend group full of 30-something underachievers that she sees potential in, and they hang out in a bar called the Glass Onion. She brings Miles Braun into the group. Everyone hates him until he helps them find success in their given field, and as he continues to help them, they become more and more indebted to him. One night, while they're all together at the bar, Andy sketches out the foundations for a new company on a napkin, and she and Miles build that company into Alpha, one of the largest and most successful companies in the world. Miles wants to dance with the devil and put an unstable fuel source out into the world, and Andy takes her 50% of the company and leaves to prevent him from doing so. He sues her, claiming that he had the idea for the company solely on his own, and all of Andy's friends are so indebted to Miles that they perjure themselves on his behalf, testifying against Andy. Andy loses her money and then does the most insanely stupid thing in human history by secretly revealing to only the people at risk that she has the smoking gun evidence which could potentially end all of their careers. Miles finds out about it, drives to her house, kills her, takes the evidence, and almost runs over Duke trying to escape the crime scene. He thinks he's gotten away with it, plans a weekend getaway for his co-conspirators, and then sends an invitation to Andy, presumably as cover for his crime. Her twin sister Helen finds the invitation and brings in Blanc. Duke finds out about Andy being found dead and puts two and two together. He tries to leverage it to his advantage, but Miles just poisons him instead before killing the lights and attempting to murder Helen Brand. Then Blanc puts all the pieces together. Helen survives, finds the napkin proving Alpha was Andy's idea, and confronts Miles. Miles burns the napkin, so Helen burns everything else, cut to black. Notice anything particular about this movie? While this is definitely an ensemble film in terms of well-balanced screen time amongst all the characters, there are really only 2 or 3 people who are actually doing anything. It's basically just Miles and Andy/Helen. Blanc is important, but really only as a conduit for the audience. Everyone else is just kind of hanging out with the rest of us, watching this all go down. And maybe that's the point. They're hangers-on to Miles, and they're hangers-on in this movie. But it's so much wasted potential. I mean, you have Leslie Odom Jr. and Kathryn Hahn both in your movie, and this is all you can give them to do? I just don't get why he chose to tell the story this way. And then let's just go ahead and get to the biggest issue. The whole film boils down to the fact that a group of friends witnessed Andy coming up with the idea for Alpha and then lied about that in court 10 years later, causing the movie to unfold. If that's really going to be the crux of your mystery, why did you fill that friend group full of characters who would obviously have never been friends? I mean, maybe it would have been better to lean more into an old friends reuniting movie and hang a lantern on the fact that they would have never been friends if they met today, you know? You could at least mine that for more comedy. Or maybe they've never met at all, and the fact that they're all strangers who've been invited by a mutual friend could help increase the tension and mystery when the movie really heats up. You can even still keep the perjury connection, and one of the big reveals is that they've all made the same devil's bargain. I don't know. It's just such a weird misstep that's ultimately not that big of a deal, but is just so obvious and avoidable in a movie that otherwise nails pretty much everything else that I just can't stop thinking about it. Anyway, that's really all I've got to say about Glass Onion and ensemble movies in general. Like I said, I had a lot of fun the first time I saw it, and that's not irrelevant to this discussion. It didn't really hold up that well for me in subsequent viewings, but not all movies are supposed to. Most films are simply meant to just entertain an audience for a couple of hours, and I've met very few people who weren't entertained by it. That's going to do it for me. If you like the vibe of this video, check out this one I did on the use of movement in Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. I think you'll like it too. My life is empty and meaningless if you don't subscribe to this channel, so help me out on that front if you can. And for everyone else, I'm Tyler, and this was Film Session.